morning and happy Friday, everyone.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone.
New week, new Unplugged. What do you want to bring up today?
I guess market offers a lot of volatility those days. There's still a lot of movement in different markets. Would be happy to know how each one of you feels about the market. What's your sentiment at the moment? More, short and long-term perspective. Does it affect what's in place with mostly on the crypto market with the halving and so on?
Marco, do you want to take that and then maybe we can chip in?
Yeah, it's quite an overview because because there's a lot of things to unpack. To be honest, start probably the most, let's say, fresh news is the since the ETF launch, what we are experiencing is issue with the price due to lots of unloading of Grayscale shares of the ETF, flying to other ETFs, or even just cashing a bit out, because now we have that option. We have to remember that Grayscale product was a non-cashing out product, so it's, I would say, totally natural and normal that this is happening. What's normal?
Marco, can you just explain that for a second?
Because Bitcoin, Grayscale Bitcoin Trust was a trust, and from a trust, you cannot. The redemption are extremely different than an ETF. It's not an investment product.
But were there any redemptions? Were they permitted previously? Had there been no redemptions?
No, in this case was specifically either you do it through OTCs, which is a mechanism which you sell to somebody else over the counter. And otherwise, no, because the whole premises of that was buying at a discount, and then the trust would then be transformed into ETF, and at the transformation, you could have execute a redemption. So the whole premise of that investment vehicle has always been the transformation into an ETF in order to generate cash flows. The thing is, like, there is a huge difference in fees from pretty substantial, 50 to 100 to 75 base points difference between Grayscale and iShare, BlackRock, and the others, and that's why this is annual fees. Right? So it's fees that you keep paying every single year, independently of what's happening. So it makes sense that you want to move it to somebody else ETF, because this is passive costs. It's not like there's a different mechanism behind the scenes. It's just basically you pay more for it. It's like you have insurance on a car, and you find another insurance, exactly the same features, just cheaper, just to jump it. Right? It's an easy thing. Plus, you have this outflow of people that are cashing out because they couldn't before. The outflow is not like the total outflow out of Grayscale is quite important. It's quite substantial. We started at 600 million. Now we are cooling off a bit at around 300 something, 350, which is still a lot. And then you have an inflow into the others. The thing is, like, first of all, this is a massive, in specific trading hours, you have a massive outflows. So sell and then rebuy. And not all of this goes into rebuy. So the market's seeing this, and so it's like, wait, all the other participants, right, don't want too much to jump in, because they're, let's say, they're waiting. Let's say when the outflow from Grayscale stops, then I'll jump in, because then I will know that I will be safer in terms of pricing. So right now, the market outside this narrative doesn't have a lot going on the Bitcoin side, but this is the major narrative. Like I said, the tail, we are hopefully on the tail of this story.
So, just a question, Marco. I mean, in anticipation of the ETF, everybody was talking about the demand, right? The demand coming from the institutions, and the expectation from the street was, we're coming in, the price going to just, the volume just going to kick the price up. The narrative in advance of the launch of the ETFs, at least from what I read, was nowhere to be seen as far as the GBTC angle in terms of the anticipated sell pressure. Was that something you picked up on? I just hadn't read much about it at all.
No, I haven't.
It feels
but
like a little unexpected.
No, I think I haven't read it. I haven't picked up on this. And to be honest, I think it's going to be a sideline story. The difference here is that always general public has always this let me try to explain this. General public, and I put myself inside, right? We're driven by the narrative rather than specific data. Traders at the bank, for example, who are given a mission of buying Bitcoin by the end of the year, they are looking for entry price. They are looking for stories to do it. They are looking for the right time to do it. And it's not like if they buy it in 2 months, it's going to change anything for them. Because the mission is to buy a certain amount, to have certain exposure by the end of the year, the quarter, whatever it is. The idea that those, let's say, a trader has a preference is something that is very retail. Me, you, Francesco, Maxime, that we all have preference. We want to capture, we want to get in at this time but when you are a professional trader and you work for a bank, this is your job. It's like, I need to do this by the end of the week. It's not like I need to do it on Monday. It's not necessarily I need to do it on Monday, right? I can schedule it whenever I want. And so the institutional story is an important one because it's a steady in, because it's compliant with the regulation, because now you have an asset that could be inside portfolio, but also that could be used as a hedging against something else. They need to build the correlations and so on. So there is a story of positive story, and I was expecting, I still see this as extremely positive, is that short period, the narrative has been now, well, there is this specific group of people that want to move out, as I was saying, for this reason of the grayscale. So there is the grayscale thing, but this could only be something that happens, is transitory, while the ETF being launched is a historical situation, is opening the market too. And as I've seen, we say this many times in the past or previous Unplugged, the ETF of the gold didn't went exponential from one day forward. What you can see is that little by little, there's only ramping up.
Yeah.
So even if we have another 2-3 weeks of this until the situation dry out and then price start raising up, it's not like it's going to be anything different once you create these moving averages and you see the price going up.
Sure. So demand's been pretty strong, though, right? I mean, we've seen the aggregate sum of sort of demand coming into all of the ETFs has been historically high, in fact. But as you mentioned, tempered by the sell pressure. So it left the market in this.
There was a net positive. It's not like it was a zero event. When the ETF were launched, there was a lot of people buying in. I mean, a lot of institutions. So the pre-sale has been already executed, and has been absorbed to a certain extent from not just grayscale people's investors selling out. There's a lot of retailers who have sold it. Hopefully, I say hopefully because otherwise, for two reasons, but these people will are just looking for sell the news and then buy again later. And they're maybe waiting for these grayscale stories. Otherwise, if they thought that if these people, traders or investors, retail, that have sold their Bitcoin thinking that this is it, yeah, I hope for them that to have other successful trades, but that's not going to be, in my opinion, the story. That's not going to be the end of it.
Yeah,
so,
I must say, I mean, I did expect the Sell the News event, but not necessarily the Sell GBTC. So Bitcoin and the market in general have been on a tear for a while. So sort of a correction, I think, particularly in such a volatile market, is always a bit healthy. I think it's interesting to see how the traditional part of the industry manages the correction from an emotional standpoint. I don't think Wall Street is really that used to handling a fresh bullish investment and finding themselves 20% down in a week. That's quite new.
I think they expected a bit, like something of. We are assessing ourselves here because the market was primarily retail. So institution coming in, institution, like I said, has a completely different trading patterns than retail. So the stories, and they are completely misaligned between the two, and they need to find a balance. But I started to see, and this is why I always be positive about Bitcoin, even in the previous sessions, and I see this ETF as a positive thing, is what I'm seeing is what's happening in China, which is the fundamentals of why people buy Bitcoin. It has nothing to do with the ETF, with being available on the US market, timing it, yet nothing to do with that. There's a lot to do with the global macros, economic situation. China being in the really bad situation, financially wise, as they are at the moment. I can make a parenthesis about this later, explain what's happening on China. But Chinese, although they are banned from selling it and mining, from trading cryptocurrency and mining, are massively buying Bitcoin right now, since the story has break out 2 days ago or yesterday, I don't remember exactly, but they are going to Bitcoin. And why? Because when your government leave you out in the open, guess what you do? I think it's the story of many human beings. I would say it's the story of recent modern lifetimes, right? Of parents trying to hedge against inflation. I think now the story has evolved. For our generation, is you have to hedge your government, not inflation. Your government doing stupid things, your government trying to look out for themselves and not for you as a country. And that's it. And there is many countries that are out in the open with people desperate for looking for an invasion because they have not done anything wrong. The governments have done a lot wrong, but the one punished is the people. It's not the government. Yeah. So, let's say, curtailing, creating prohibition to the people, so that they could not find an escape, and they only have to suffer through the consequences without having any escape hatch. It's not something sustainable, especially in this globalized world. And so Bitcoin is exactly that. Is the escape hatch from situation when you clearly see that nice and fine, talk about whatever you want, small politics, local things, or whatever. But if this country and my money, my whole retirement fund are in my country, and my country is going, let's say, bankrupt, but they're extremely diluting my funds, my reserves. Well, this become extremely serious, and I take action.
Yeah,
because this is it's work
the
of a
bigger-
lifetime.
The bigger the crisis, the bigger the need. I think I often say this, that in the Western world, in the countries we live in, Bitcoin and crypto is still somewhat optional. It's seen as an investment. But if you live in a distressed market where your government is putting your economy under distress, hyperinflation, I mean, no wonder 9 out of 10 of the top markets, top countries by crypto adoption are distressed third world countries. That's because they don't necessarily like the protocols and believe the blockchain stories or the layer 2 scalability aspects and whatnot. They just need somehow a way to get out of their system. And in fact, that's not necessarily Bitcoin. I guess that's for the most advanced people. But even a stable coin already does the trick. It hedges them away from a hyperinflating currency.
Yeah, to a certain extent. The problem of a stable coin, I mean, this is a subject probably for another topic, for another session, but the stable coins are not exactly the same, because at that moment when you're looking for an escape route, yeah, of course, stable coins could be an option. But I would say Bitcoin is more alluring as an option because it's a completely out of the system, right? So you are not correlated to that. The same could be, like, for these people, the same could be gold. But that's why for these people, the first thing they do when a government goes distress is blocking access to gold or foreign reserve, foreign currencies.
It's hard to own gold in the first place. I mean, you can through an ETF, but if we're talking of third world countries, accessing an ETF is not that straightforward. With crypto, you need an internet connection and a wallet, and you're in, basically. That's it.
And I mean, luckily we are privileged. That's the thing. We are very, very privileged, but not privileged because color of the skin or anything else. We are privileged because we live in a part of the world which is relatively safe and stable. I mean, I mentioned relatively, but that's a big topic, because the majority of the world does not live in that side of in this situation, does not have this kind of access and freedoms. And those freedoms go out of the window in a few seconds. One interesting story that I read, like, just before going to bed yesterday, is that the Supreme Court of Canada finally, I would say finally and hopefully, because not because of my political allegiance, I don't have a peculiar one, but I always find out that the Canadian government, the latest one, has an extremely weird, I would say, way of interpreting liberalism and liberal laws. And basically, if you protest, they froze your bank account, and they froze your cryptocurrency accounts as well. And that's not freedom. That's not that's not a Western society. That's Russia. It's not Canada.
Yeah.
And now the Supreme Court has reversed that decision. I've find out that it's not constitutional to froze cryptocurrency asset to people who are protesting against you because of your political ideas.
Yeah, it's private property, right? I mean, we should not be in a world where your private property can be confiscatable.
Yeah, I mean, you may disagree with the fundamentals of the protester, which is fine. Probably I would, in specific case that they're talking about. but that doesn't give you the right to stop people from being able to use the money. If I can make a joke, and Maxime, like if they apply this in French, in France, basically they stop doing everything because protesting is a national feature, which is extremely good, to be honest, because it's healthy to have people that can keep the government in check. But when you stop, when you froze the bank account, you froze their any way for them to sustain themselves. Of course, they stop protesting because they're scared, not because they do not agree. They agree with you. But this is kind of, as Putin was saying, England is a very dangerous country. People fall out of skyscrapers' windows like nothing, because somebody has the courage to speak against it. I mean, if we are going that direction everywhere, I see that it's normal that cryptocurrency general, instead of just being a digital evolution of finance, become a refuge space for freedom fighters and from people who wants to live the life they want.
Let's not forget, I was just reading a quote from Satoshi Nakamoto overnight, where historically he was suggesting we've been grown to trust, we've had to trust institutions and banks to look after our privacy, to look after our money. But without wanting to sound conspirational theory, time and time again, that trust has failed. And I mean, that's no wonder that the creator of the first cryptocurrency had precisely that in his mind. He wanted a great and an unconfiscatable asset governed by maths and computer science, not by politics or personal interests. And a few years down the line, just judging on where we came from and where we're at 15 years later with ETFs, and I read somewhere in, I think it might have been Coinbase, I might be wrong about the source, but I think we're at roughly 500 million users. I'm always a bit scared about these sort of mega numbers. 500 million users in the crypto economy. That means, I just think every one of us might have 10, if not more, wallets and addresses. I think it's counted by addresses, so it's not a real user count, but nevertheless, it's a big number. Anyway, we've digressed a bit. Maxime, you asked the original question on sentiment. How do you feel about the market? And Davide, what's your reaction been? What does that mean to you? What are you reading or hearing?
I mean, long term, still the same. I think nothing goes only up, right? You need some consolidation. You need market will just never move up in a straight line. Wasn't expecting the GBTC, so the grayscale happening. I didn't saw it. Of course, we had this correction. Marco mentioned multiple times, like this level of a 48K as being like a resistance. It's more like technical things, but it usually align with the narrative. So when you reach a certain price, you usually have a different narrative popping up, and it's creating a reaction on the price. But I think long term it doesn't change. The halving is encoded in Bitcoin, as you just said. So it's code, it's math. It will happen again and again and again. We can't stop it. So nothing changed on the fundamental of Bitcoin itself. And yeah, time will tell. Bitcoin corrected multiple times. As you said, 20% is a lot when you look at your portfolio and you say you invest in a new asset class and you lose 20% in a week. It's a lot. But for Bitcoin, it happened so many times that we had correction of 20, 30% during a bull run. So even though you're going up, large move up means a huge correction as well. And in the timeline of investing in for at least months and years, I think the trend is still intact, right? If you take it from 209 to 16 to 20 till now, we're going up. So I still believe that's the path we're taking. We still have a lot of Bitcoin in cold storage, even though we have this inflow from Grayscale. And the volume as you already mentioned, the volume were quite high. So for an ETF introduction, that was successful. A lot of retailers were thinking that we were going up in a straight line. I think it was just too easy, in my view. Like, it's like if you just see the ETF news and you expect you're going to do 100%, I felt it was too easy. So if it happened, never say never, but it was kind of obvious somehow that things would not happen that easily. But
just casually, I mean,
yeah.
One thing I've noticed over the last few weeks is people that know I'm in this space and what my beliefs are have been more open to chit chat about Bitcoin. It just feels like since the ETF moment, it's just been debunked, legitimized. Suddenly it's become from this scammy spaceship that nobody understands, that it's used for money laundering, to an official approved rubber stamp product on the street, and therefore one we're able to have a normal conversation in the elevator, in a shopping store, over beer, or wherever. It just feels like the tone has changed. Forget the price. I just mean it just feels like a different product when actually it's not changed at all since day one. That's crazy, actually. David, what about you?
Yes, I think from a less, I agree with the technical point of view, but from a less technical point of view, I think that in my perspective, when I open Binance and I see a launch pad or a launch pool every 3 or 4 days, and when I open Coinbase and there are free cryptos for everyone who's taking the surveys and everything, it reminds me of of when the bull market was running. So it's I see from quite a social perspective a lot of positive signs. Also, Binance reopened the possibility of using euros on the platform. So it's a good sign, and I feel like everything is happening again, like the last bull run, slowly, and I think it's let's see what happens. But there are a lot of positive signs also from a social perspective.
Yeah, I'll share a couple interesting things I picked up in the last week or two. Now, I don't associate at all with a man and his politics necessarily, but I think the narrative is an interesting one. And I'm talking about President, I can't say his name, Milei, the Argentinian guy. Have you seen his speech translated with AI at Davos, at the World Economic Forum? If not, I would really recommend you listen to it. It's half an hour of his speech in Spanish, but if you look it up on YouTube, you'll find it auto-translated through AI with his own tone of voice in English, which is quite interesting already, just seeing how we can start picking up on real speeches with AI sort of translated voice chords, if you like, but the content of what he delivered. First of all, he's the only man that turned up from in economy class, flying from South America, vis-a-vis the thousands of private jets landing on their runways. But the content of what he's trying to allude to, I know there are vast amounts of protests on the street, although he did get the majority votes to get elected. He's making immense amounts of reforms, effectively trying to lighten up the state, the centralized institutions. So I'm not here to say great, amazing, but I do think there's some truth, there's something interesting about what's going on there, and I think it's so contrary in a way to anything we've seen recently, and let's call them Western G10, G20 countries, that I think it's an experiment, and certainly a content with a depth of speech. Let's not forget this guy was an economist, so he's not just some random politician speaking out of speaker notes. He's been a professor for years, and I think it's a presentation worthwhile. The other thing,
can I jump in, because I saw it, not the full version. I saw the shorter version, down to 30 minutes, but I found it extremely interesting. Couple of things, and I see that the first is the depiction that it has in the media is depicted like
A clown.
a clown, a joker. It didn't, like, the speech was extremely factual. And the second one was something that it's really easy to follow into this narrative now. Argentina, bad people. Like this was extremely interesting to me. Like, Argentinian bad people. It's like, are they bad people, or their government made bad choices in the past? So when a government made bad choices, we are okay to create this stigma over the whole country for what the government does. But we're not okay to doing this to us. Like, the 3 Italians and 1 French, like, there's nothing, probably we are the top level contrarian against the government group of people in the world. But we would be extremely annoyed, and no one will accept it to be identified as the government of our countries as a group, and it will be, even in a talk show in our countries, will be unthinkable that you classify everyone in France as what Macron says or what Macron does, or everyone in Italy as Meloni does or think. That would be unthinkable in our countries. But we are pretty fine in doing this for other people. We have no problem in saying Argentinian bad people. But we have data for this. Argentina was extremely rich was one of the richest countries in the world after World War II. But and then plunged into a recession, became very poor later on. So it's I think it's extremely interesting how we do not look at data, we do not look at these narratives, and we give an explanation as, oh, but they are bad people. Whenever something happened it's not about their economic model, it's not about the choices they have made. There is no analysis on this. It's just because they are bad people.
Yeah. And then just switching on to the US, we were talking about the stability of economies and why in certain markets Bitcoin and crypto have been adopted more than others. So we're privileged. But if we start from the top, or the perceived to be leading economy in the world, the United States, a couple of data points. One I might have mentioned before. First thing is, off the back of the Q4, the latest report of the US government, the level of debt financing, i.e. the amount of money, taxpayers' money, is going towards financing their debts, has triggered $1 trillion per annum. I mean, that's a staggering amount. $1 trillion is taken from taxpayers just to pay back the US loan. And that number is only going up and projected to be $3 trillion by the end of this decade at the current rate per annum. That in itself is I think, crazy. It's approximately the same amount the US government is spending for military and healthcare. And just think about what that means for a country. It's insane. So in terms of thinking about fundamental health of an economy, that worries me. And I'll just add one. Maybe you're following this. There's a Twitter channel that I like following, which is the Kobesi letter. Just last night, 14% of all commercial real estate loans and 44% of office building loans are now in negative equity. In other words, the debt is now greater than the property value on all of these properties. US banks hold over 2.9 trillion of commercial real estate debt, the majority of which is held by regional banks. that's not a great picture. You're talking about Evergrande earlier, Marco, from the Chinese real estate side, but US real estate financing doesn't seem to be in a fantastic place either. So, hearing on the one hand, inflation's been tamed, interest rates are expected to come down this year. That's positive in a way, should bring an injection of liquidity back into the markets, but fundamentals still look shaky, at least judging from the headlines. But we'll see what 2024 brings.
Well, this I think it will be another. That's what I would say. That the fundamentals, like China, with the story of Evergrande, of not repaying offshore bonds, as a result of this blind politic action, you had the reaction of external investors, offshore investors, selling off China stocks. And because real estate in China is a quarter of the GDP, just to give the numbers, it's extremely high. So that's falling off. They try now as a reaction. They're very, very cautious, but they try to reduce basically the reserves in each bank, so they can lend out more money. This clearly will not solve the problem. It's going to be actually increasing the issue, because then you have banks falling out the picture, because they will be sending out, they will give loans to more and more sketchy people. That's the only action. So let's see what's happening with this real estate story in the US. I feel that here, it's going to be another story like that for sure. And the reaction there is a bit better, because they cannot do as China does. China is getting away with a lot of bullshit, pardon my French. One of the solutions is printing more money, because if the equity that you have is the asset value is going down, one of the things you can do to solve it is to bring down the value, which is the notional against it, which is dollar.
Yeah. But
So
again,
if the dollar goes down, your office building does not go down, because you are not diluting the space. So that's
you're only adding more debt, more money, and adding to the bigger problem. So
there is. I think that there is a global idea that already that is just a number. There is no function on US debt. There is a function for everybody else. As you said, they need to repay, and that when they dilute everything, it means that their interest goes up.
Yeah,
because they have to give out the same part of the pie. Now the pie is just bigger. So yeah, let's see.
Thank you, guys. I think we've come to the top of our Friday slot. Unless there's anything else anyone wanted to share. If not, stay safe. There are lots of macro headwinds out there. The markets are down. The headwinds are tricky. So be cautious. Read, study, learn, and don't put in more than you can afford to lose. With that, let's wrap it here and see you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you. See you next week. Bye.